never forget I was campaigning ahead of the 2015 election, and I spoke to a family, and they had twin children who were going to university, and they were going to lose their home because of the bedroom tax. And I remember saying to them on the doorstep, well, actually, if Labour win this election, then you will no longer have to pay the bedroom tax. And you could, it sounds trite, but you could see hope in their eyes. And we lost that election. I remember seeing them in the street a bit afterwards, and the dad said, "I'm really sorry that you didn't win." I said, I'm sorry I didn't win for you as well. And that same house we canvassed in the run up to the 2017 election, and someone different lived there. And that's the difference that a Labour government makes.
Hello and welcome to the We Are Labour podcast. I am Dan Greef, your host, and this is the show that highlights our amazing Labour candidates and the constituencies we need to win to form the next Labour government. As you hear the stories and experiences from our candidates, I want you to think, how can you help? What can you do to make the difference? Can you go and leaflet, knock on doors, donate money, or phone canvass voters? By giving a little of your time and or money, it will make a massive difference. This election will be won by Labour members doing our bit to help get the Labour message of hope out to our communities. Let's crack on with the show. Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of We Are Labour. Happy Easter. I'm releasing this on Good Friday, so hopefully you're out canvassing this weekend. If not, I hope you're just enjoying chocolate and a bit of downtime. We know most likely the election's not going to be in May now. However, it's still really important we keep the pressure up. So if you can go out and do some campaigning, maybe it's leafleting, maybe it's door knocking, please do. And in particular, I want to just let you know about Calder Valley, which is where my guest today, Josh Fenton-Glynn, is the candidate this time. So he has been there for the last few general elections, actually. In 2017, he was only 600 votes away. So if there's a seat that you think, where could it really make a difference, my time sort of having a conversation with somebody or leafleting, then Calder Valley is definitely the place for you. Especially if you're in the Manchester, Leeds kind of area, the north of England, then it's very easy to get to because it's in the middle of those cities. So yeah, please go there and do your bit to help, either this weekend or in the future. Just to let you know that Liz Truss herself stood here in 2005. So Josh could have been up against her. But of course, you came to kind of much more my neck of the woods in the end. Lucky us. So if you want to go and help there, you can. Josh is a fantastic candidate for us. Somebody who really, I think, talks to the Labour values on the doorstep and how when we don't win, it's our communities who don't win. When we lose elections, they lose. And when we win elections, we can then bring that victory to our communities to make a massive difference to their everyday lives. So, yeah, I hope you enjoy this episode. If you're not canvassing, if you're just enjoying eggs, I hope you enjoy them as well. But please go out and help however you can. Might be donating money, leafleting, knocking on doors, whatever it is, because we want to get those Tories out and a Labour government in. Right, happy Easter, everyone. I'll hand you over now to Josh Fenton-Glynn. Hello, Josh. Welcome to We Are Labour. It's fantastic to have you here. And I think you're the first person we've had outside of the east of England where I'm based as well. So it means that the show is spreading. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, welcome to Yorkshire.
Oh, thank you. It's great. It's nice and sunny there. I love it.
Yeah. And welcome to the Pennine Belt as well, actually. It's interesting. There's kind of few seats across the Pennines that are kind of permanent marginals, and actually they will decide this election. And I think it's really important that, the kind of, I guess, for your podcast to get a bit of a sense of the size of our country, the places and the communities, and give people real opportunity to see what it's like at the front line. And, this seat has been at the front line in every general election we've had.
Right, let's talk about that then. So Calder Valley, I'm not really au fait with that part of the world. I looked on a map this morning, so I do know at least where it is. But can you tell the listeners and the viewers, where is Calder Valley and what's it like there? What's your connection to the area as well?
Calder Valley is the best place on earth. So you may have seen Calder Valley if you've ever seen the BBC drama Happy Valley,
Right.
because that is based here. We have fewer murders than you have in that particular drama. But actually, there are some things in terms of the rendering of Calder Valley and Happy Valley that do ring true, because it's stunningly beautiful around here, and it's we kind of run from Tomberden at one end through Hebden Bridge, which is obviously quite kind of a well-known town for its kind of bohemian nature, through to Mythenroyd, Ludden, and then kind of we go a bit round Halifax, and so we've got some really rural areas like Ryburn and Hipperholm, and then we've got Brighouse and Rastrick, famous of course for the Brighouse and Rastrick brass band, who had the longest running #2 in British chart history with the floral dance.
Right.
I'm full of facts like this. It's so it goes round Halifax. It's between Leeds and Manchester. There's a lot of kind of. It was traditionally the wool industry. Obviously, that industry died back quite a lot, but a lot of the old mills are now used as for business startups. Someone from the Federation of Small Business once said that we had more businesses that last over a year in Calderdale than I think anywhere kind of comparable, and we've got a kind of thriving small business sector.
Well, that's interesting. Can I just ask you about that? Because I run a small business. So what is it in the area that is helping SMEs to flourish?
So I think that the council do a very good job, and I would say that because I'm a local councillor. But also I think beyond that, I think there is something about people working together, and I think in this area we do tend to work closely together. And it means that you've got lots of incubation and lots of places working closely with each other, and whether it be that kind of sharing of expertise and knowing what people are doing, or be that kind of offering services to one another, and I think that kind of keeps people going, and I think it's a really positive business community, and I think there are several things that this government needs to do to help small businesses, many of which are in our in our plans for government, but actually one of the key things that you can do at a local level is make sure that you're supporting people to work together. So as I say, it's a lot of small businesses, which is kind of interesting. We've also got a big chemical industry at the other end of the valley. So historically what happened was a lot of the places that used to be dye producers, when the wars came round, they had people with chemical expertise, and they used that to change to explosives manufacture and so forth, and that then ended up being kind of different types of advanced chemical manufacturing. So in what we call the lower valley, so Brighouse, Rastrick, Elland, places like that, you have a lot of those small chemical producers, and that's kind of a business there. And then you also have a lot of commuters, so people will commute to Leeds, Bradford, Manchester, Huddersfield, Rochdale, Oldham, and so forth. There was one time an article on the BBC that said that Hebden Bridge should be the UK's second city because it was in the middle of so many important towns, that if we thought about it in the same way that we think of kind of like London as a conurbation, and we actually value transport outside of London in this country, then you could really kind of have a thriving second city of Calder Valley with these strange suburbs like Leeds and Manchester and these outlying areas. And,
I'm sure that's popular down there. It's next to the woods.
Yes. Well, in Calderdale, we know that we're the centre of the world. It's just it'll take the rest of the world a bit of time
to get there. So in terms of getting there, that's important, right? So if you're an activist who's travelling from any other part of the country, you are between Manchester, Leeds, near Sheffield.
Yeah.
You're kind of in that central part, which you can get to quite easily, I guess.
Not near Sheffield, near Huddersfield, but yeah.
Huddersfield, okay.
Sheffield is South Yorkshire. I'll draw you a map later.
Okay, so I'm offending a Yorkshireman here. It's gone wrong. It's gone wrong. Be careful.
No,
they get very funny about Yorkshire. They really do.
No, the only reason I know that is that when I'm driving up to my in-laws in Leicester, Sheffield's our kind of halfway point, and I get Sheffield, I'm like, still not out of Yorkshire. We've still got an hour.
Oh wow, that's amazing! It's bigger than I thought. Then okay. Well, I'm from Norfolk, which is also one of the biggest counties. So we'll make just that. We're getting all like county loyalists here. It's weird, isn't it? But it's important as well.
I think so. Norfolk has the least rain in the country. I believe that's the
Yeah, I
case
think that's
of
true
all the
because
counties,
it's generally
and
like.
we
Sorry, go
have
on.
the most. We have the most
Really,
rain
more
in
than
the country.
Wales?
Yeah.
More than Wales? I'm
Well, I don't
interested
know,
by
but
that.
Wales is a different country.
Oh, sorry to the Welsh there. Yeah, I used to live in Wales, and I just remember like the first term at university, it was raining every single day. So
Yeah,
yeah, I guess you're right, but I think the Welsh as a
yeah,
separate nation might beat England, and certainly Ireland
potentially.
is very wet as a separate nation as
Yeah,
well. To make that very
they're,
clear.
they're, they're very much a separate nation. I'm not
Yeah,
going to get
very
into
much.
that.
Let's get away from the controversy of
I was
Ireland
going
and
to
the
say,
Northern England
I
Ireland
just got
question.
I just got one note from my organizer, which is try not to say anything too controversial, and already we're talking about Irish statehood.
Yeah, let move on, Josh. Let's keep away from that. But let's go back to Calder Valley because is it right to say you come from there originally, or certainly you live there,
Yeah,
don't you?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you've stood
So
there a number of times as well, haven't you? You've stood
yeah,
quite a few general
yeah.
elections.
So yeah, so going back, I was born here, went to local schools here. I'm a local councillor here, and have been since 2016. And I'm cabinet member for Adult Services and Wellbeing, which is social care, which is, as I'm sure our politically engaged audience will know, is a really it's quite a big area for how we need to sort out the country. Yeah, so I have stood here before. I first stood in 2015. I was a loyal supporter of Ed Miliband and was very keen to see him be Prime Minister. The country were less keen, and we didn't win, but we got, I think, one of the biggest swings in the country to the Labour Party in that election. Um, and then kind of in my head, I was sort of done with it, and I became a local councillor, and I was kind of, still caring about what I was doing, but I was taking a bit of a step back and, kind of thinking about starting a family and all those things that you start thinking about doing in your early 30s. And I got a call from the party, and I was actually on holiday in Malaysia, and they called me up and they said Theresa May's called a general election. And I was like, okay, I mean, and they said, and we don't have a candidate in Calder Valley. And I said, well, this sounds very much like a you problem because I'm about to climb a mountain in Malaysia, and that's not.
Thanks for telling me, guys. See you later.
I hope you have fun. And they said, look, this isn't the easiest thing we've ever asked you to do, but you're quite popular in Calder Valley. People know who you are. You know how to run a campaign. Would you mind running? And their words were, you're going to lose, but you'll keep the Tories out of Halifax and give us the best chance of keeping neighbouring MP Holly Lynch in a seat. And on that basis, that seemed like a reasonable case to make. And actually, for me, it was really important that a lot of my activists had given hours of their lives to help, support a Labour government. And so I owed it to them to give us the best chance of keeping the seat marginal and kind of running as hard a campaign as we could. So in my usual way, I did that thing where, I kind of threw myself straight into it, got back from the holiday, and we ran, and we came within 600 votes of winning because 2017 was a very strange election. And we'd had a difficult local election just before then, but we came within 600 votes of winning, and kind of made it. And I think we were ahead until the postal vote came in. And I think that at that point it was slightly surreal. I wasn't quite sure whether to be gutted or very happy. I mean, I was mainly happy because actually remembering where we started, and because of the peculiarities that we may well go on to later of the constituency, we'd started without an office because the Labour Party office that we had been flooded. And so we had to rebuild our office. We had to fully fundraise for a campaign, and we ran what I think was a very good campaign, a campaign I'm immensely proud of in terms of the work that our activists did. And we came within 600 votes. And actually, I think, I don't think we could have done any more. So I'm kind of proud of what we left there and how strong we made the Labour Party. So when 2019 came up, everyone said, well, you've got to run now. And so ran in 2019. We obviously 2019 was a tough election. I think once the Brexit Party said that they weren't going to run it, made it very difficult for any Labour candidates in marginal seats to win. And we did what we could, and we had a swing against us, but actually we did outperform the rest of the country again. So actually in all three times I've run, we've outperformed the rest of the country, but we didn't win that one, which was obviously a tough one to take. And yeah, this is my fourth time, so following in the feet of some MPs that have made a real difference. I think Jack Straw ran 6 times before he won.
Daniel Zeichner
And
here
John Bennett.
locally, he stood a long time, many times. And the
Yeah,
difference is, though, I'd say, Josh, is that like, you and I both did in 2015 the first time. If this was like a normal decade, then we probably would have stood
yeah,
twice in that time. Whereas because, of
yeah,
course, you had the 2015, 17, 19, it completely threw out all the numbers, really, didn't it?
yeah,
Where it kind of came to the point where every 2 to 2.5 years you expected a general election to come along because that's what
yeah,
happened for a few times. So
yeah,
it was a bit of a catalyst time, wasn't it?
yeah. It was surreal, and I think I was almost not going to do it again. And I did a lot of work as a counsellor over COVID, and a lot of people started kind of talking to me, like coming up to me in the street, kind of after that, saying, "I really hope you'll stand again because we really appreciate the stuff you did on COVID and that kind of thing." And I think it's really hard to say no to, particularly if I mean I still care about all of the things that I cared about when I first stood. And I now have 10 years of experience in local government. I've got experience, working in healthcare that I do now, and I've got experience, the kind of my old experience of kind of working on anti-poverty work. So I really think that actually, to make a difference on the things that I care about, this is something that I could do a really good job of, and that's why I've stood again.
Fantastic. Can I just ask on that point? And I think I was going to say this really for the listeners now. You might be listening and you haven't been campaigning before. And when I say campaign, I'm talking about canvassing in particular. But I think there's something that Josh and I, and I'll ask Josh in a moment, I'm sure that you and I can relate to the fact that hearing the stories and being on the doorstep year in, year out as a local person, but also in the national elections, it does just mean you have that connection in a way that is really special. Because if you haven't canvassed before, you won't realize this, but you really get in like a glimpse of somebody's life. Like I think into politics sometimes we can look at the news and that becomes politics and Twitter. And, we talk to fellow Labour people or we read the sort of comments by other parties, etc., and the government. But actually, there's also that side of politics, which is the knock on the door, I'm here to listen. And of course, we're there to find out if they're Labour voters or not. But also, you get a little bit of a sense of their life and their struggles and how you can make a difference. And that's why I think for you it's interesting. Standing so many times, you must know this patch so well now.
I do, and I mean, I love knocking on doors, and it is. I mean, it sounds trite, but it is a privilege to hear about people's lives, and I know the patch very well, and actually, I mean, the thing about Calder Valley is that you are speaking to a lot of very different communities. It's one of the reasons it's a bellwether is because actually you go from a kind of you've got a kind of a bit more socially conservative population at one end of the valley, you've got a bit more socially liberal at the other end. You've got, kind of if you looked at the Remain Leave breakdown, the different communities very much voted different ways. And actually, it's a really important discipline because it's so easy to get pigeonholed with your bubble. And I think this is true of all politicos. We care and we're passionate about politics, and we forget that actually most people aren't, and most people deal with life in the immediate, and they have their interests and so forth, and then every 4 or 5 years they're asked to vote and they vote, and going from one community to another and thinking about how our messages land is really useful for knowing what's going to fly and what's not going to fly, because otherwise, we're going to end up in this situation where we have we come out with policies that we're utterly convinced by, and we think that the strength of our passion is the same as a lot of people agreeing with us. And that's one of the biggest mistakes. You can see it with the Tories at the moment. You know, they think if only we offered more tax cuts,
Yeah.
then people will see and they'll vote for us. And actually, that's not what people are looking for. People are looking for a school that their kids can go to that isn't, you know, full of
Yeah.
rack. They're looking for being able to go to A&E and knowing that they're safe and knowing that their children will be safe. And you don't, you know, and you see that knocking on doors. You see that with that discipline of talking to people in different communities. And it means that, you know, I mean, I remember speaking to one of our activists and I said, Labour just need to put the case for the end to prisons. And I'm like, I'm sorry. But if you've been to some of the estates where we canvass and you actually hear, you know, the fear that antisocial behaviour puts people through, you know, I think that there was a stat recently that 1 in 10 people in the UK have moved house because of antisocial behaviour. You think about how that ruins people's lives, then, you know, the kind of
One
the
in
liberal
10.
view
Wow.
of which, I know it's
That's a lot,
honestly
isn't
the
it?
liberal view of which people kind of convince themselves is fine until it comes up against someone with lived experience. And actually,
Yeah.
we have to take lived experience really seriously, and you see that in canvassing, and you see that in all the communities that you speak to.
Yeah, for sure. So, what would you say then is probably one of the most pressing concerns for your particular area of Calder Valley?
So I think, I mean, one of the ones is education, because everyone wants to know that they're sending their kids to a good school that will give them the best opportunity in life. We've got a number of schools that need rebuilding. One of our schools in 2010, Michael Gove said was the worst example of a failed school building that he'd ever seen in the run up to the
Wow.
election.
Wow.
This was when he was Shadow Education Secretary. It's actually my old school and also where I had my first job as a teaching assistant. Um, that school was going to get building schools for the future money
Oh, that
from
all
the old
went,
Labour
didn't it?
government.
Yeah.
And yeah, the first act that they did in government when, you know, was they cancelled building schools for the future. And that school still needs a lot of work. And, you know, it's a brilliant school. It gets really good results. It's comprehensive in an area that has some grammar schools. And it, you know, it punches its weight with the grammar schools. It gets kids, you know, when I went to that school, my brother went there and, you know, he was very academically successful and, you know, got the,
And of
I think
course,
he
I
came
know
fourth
him
in his,
through Cambridge, right? He
yeah,
he came here with his
yeah.
family. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he got the fourth highest degree in his year in Oxford, a PPE. So
Fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, and like you know, and I wasn't too shabby myself, although not the academic that my brother is, I guess. And you know, it's a really good school which serves a mixed community, and you know, but it's not got the buildings, and you know, people are doing it with one hand behind their back, and actually, I think that you know, breaking down barriers to opportunity everywhere, and actually one of those barriers at the moment is that our schools are frankly, you know, are not up to scratch. We need to make sure that we're funding them properly. So I think that's something that, you know, has real resonance where we are.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think, I mean, because I'm hearing all the time about, I mean, because the school I used to teach in Mildenhall was part of the same program, which was then scrapped, and
Yeah,
that was a prefab building built in the 70s. So as you'd be teaching, suddenly the wall would move. I mean, literally the wall would move in, and you realise the teacher on the other side of the wall
yeah,
was sort of putting up posters or whatever, and you know, used to staple them straight into the wall because they would, and
oh
your
my
classroom was
God.
getting smaller. You'd be like, hang on, I'm sure my desk wasn't close to the wall like that. What's going on here? And you had to push the wall back again. It was that kind of school. And you know, and the same thing. Matt Hancock was the MP there, and I'd say to him, "What is going on with this building? Like, I thought it was going to be replaced. Oh yeah, we didn't have the money we thought we had. No, all the same things. But then you realise they do
Yeah.
prioritise tax cuts and they do prioritise things that matter to
Well,
them. We could go into PPE equipment, all the rest of it. But then our schools for our own
and
children, they don't.
there's some basic business, because you talk about Matt Hancock there, and there's basic business of being a decent local MP, which is that you're going to be the voice for your area, because actually your area won't have any other voice in Westminster.
Yeah,
Now, our local MP, Craig Whitaker, who's standing down this time, was on Education Select Committee. He was close to then Education Junior Minister Liz Truss, and he said absolutely nothing about the uh, about the schools. And we campaigned on it as one does ahead of the 2015 election. And then one day he decided to do a one-man protest on the roof of one of the most acutely damaged schools, Tomberton High School, about the fact it hadn't had the funding that it needed. So I looked him up in Hansard to see how many times he'd mentioned Tomberton High School in education debates, and he never had.
Wow.
So he was speaking in Calder Valley on the roof of a school doing this press availability because he'd been caught not doing any work for his constituency. And he's out, and the one place where he can speak and no one else can speak, in Westminster, he didn't bother. And I think, actually fundamentally, a good local MP is a champion for their community. And we've absolutely got to make sure that we remember that, because if we're going to, I don't know what the result of the next election is, but if Labour are in power or if Labour are not, then if I'm the MP for Calder Valley, I'm going to be fighting for Calder Valley. And, that's going to mean occasionally asking questions about, well, is the funding coming from our local schools? Is the funding coming from our local hospital? Because those things matter. And those things are the things where, it's that very basic understanding your job and making sure that you're not Westminster's voice in Calder Valley, Calder Valley's voice in Westminster.
Fantastic. I totally agree with you on that. And yeah, that's the thing that's probably going to swing the next election, I think, for you there, isn't it?
Yeah.
How can Labour's vision make a difference day to day? Now, I've spoken to other candidates about this, and I always kind of think it's a good question to ask, and I'm going to ask you this now as well. How do you think Labour's missions would make an actual difference to the people who are living in your area, in your street, if Labour's was able to win the next general election?
So, in terms of our missions, I think there's a couple of things. Firstly, I'd say anyone who ignores the crime mission does so at their cost, because below the headline, actually, you look at our policy. One of our policies is that we're going to halve violence against women and girls, and we're going to actually make sure that rape and sexual assault prosecutions are higher. 50% of every constituency is women, well, more than actually, but and actually it's really important that we remember as a party that part of being a party of law and order is a party of reducing violence against women and girls and making sure that we actually get those prosecutions happening. So I think that's an absolute core priority for everyone. But then you also, the getting in building pledge is really important, because it's about building jobs and getting things going. And fundamentally, there's not enough homes. And we see intergenerational settlement, as they call it. The idea that your next generation can get a better life than the previous one is being ruptured by the fact that there's not homes for people to go to. They're not able to start families, and so many other things in life that flow from there. I look at my casework as a counsellor, and the things you hear are just heartbreaking, because it's people who are doing their absolute best and they're not able to find a home, and they're not able to stay in the community where they live. So we've got to that thing about making sure that we're actually building homes. And you see it. I totally understand the temptation to not do things, because there's always a cohort of people that live somewhere that have a really strong view why, I'm not against social housing, but I don't think it's right for this area. And, our local Greens are absolute masters of it. And it's, I understand where they're coming from, because, you can convince yourself that, yes, you are in favour of social housing, but just not here. But
just
actually,
somewhere else, yeah.
I always have a question which is like, okay, well, what would get you to yes for this development? And if they can tell me, if they say, well, look, I'm nervous about, the water runoff and flooding, it's like, well, okay, well, actually, part of, so when we did our local plan, one of the supplementary planning documents was about making sure that we're looking after flooding, and we're kind of taking account for that. So if you can get to yes for that, then I think, okay, you've got legitimate issues and we need to work with people to make sure that works. I'm worried about the traffic. Okay, well, let's look at how we can improve the roads. If not, then actually I think we have to be a bit harder and say, okay, well, we need to make sure that we're building those homes. And people always have special reasons why it shouldn't be where they are. But actually, we have to be, and they've got a loud voice because they've got time to be active on that. the people that don't have a voice are the people that need homes because they're fighting day to day to make
Just to
sure
try
that
and make
there's
ends
somewhere they
meet.
can live.
Yeah, yeah. Survival's
We
hard in
are,
Britain right now, isn't it? Survival is
yeah,
very
well,
hard for
we're
many.
30 miles away from where our radish at, the boy that died because of mould lived.
Oh, of course. Yes, I
And
remember that story.
and it's I've got kids not too dissimilar in age, and the idea that the family were pleading for help and support and they weren't getting that support, and it comes down to the housing crisis. It all comes back to there. He doesn't have a voice. His family don't have a voice, and that's why sometimes you take an unpopular vote.
Yeah.
And that's because Labour is a voice for those people, and Labour is a voice for people that need that support. And it's a really important job that, and we see it when we go out canvassing, and we see it when we make sure that we do the best job that we can. But if we get Britain building, we give people homes, and it means that we get better growth, but it also means that we are, we're acting for those people that need that Labour government.
Fantastic. And actually, you know what? I think the house price situation, because of the lack of stock, affects so
Yeah,
much in everyone's lives.
yeah,
So I feel like, as a couple, my wife and I are working all the hours God sends to try and just stand
yeah,
still sometimes. And I think, and we're doing pretty well, but there's so many families who are
yeah.
really going under right now. The family holiday is being put to one side, or the
Mm,
little luxury in the shops being put down again, like Starmer said, because they just don't have the option anymore like they used to.
yeah.
And that's how life has changed for so many
I think
who are
the
doing
thing about
fairly
the
well.
cost
So
of
the ones who are
living,
struggling, you're sorry.
yeah. I think the thing about the cost of living crisis actually is interesting because obviously it's felt acutely at the food bank end, and that's always a priority. But there's a slight tendency when a Tory, Jeremy Hunt said the other week that it's really hard to get by on £100,000 income where he is,
Yeah, in
and
Surrey, I
it's just
think. Yeah,
bizarre thing to say as Chancellor, and I know it's bizarre, but actually the point is that everyone is struggling with the cost of living, and that manifests itself in different ways for everyone.
yeah,
And it does manifest itself in not going on holiday and stuff, and actually, that's not as acute as needing a food bank, but actually, fundamentally, we have an economy that is worse now than it was in 2010. We have people aren't feeling positive about being able to get on the housing ladder. We have people that are leaving university with more debt than their income potential. And and as I said before, it's that kind of that idea that, I want to leave a world better for my children than I live in now is coming a crop. And actually we need to make sure that we get back to that I hate the word intergenerational settlement because I sound like a think tank, Bob, but that kind of like that idea that people, if you're working, I mean, that everyone has that opportunity, and we're losing that as a country, and I think we need to. We talk about getting Britain's future back. We talk, but actually it's getting Britain's optimism back and getting the
yeah.
belief that things can be better. And I think we can do that, but it's the challenge that we face, and that's the key thing. And the cost of living crisis is the manifestation of that, but so is the fact that the schools are falling down. So is the fact that you go to A&E and you spend hours waiting there, and I never used to go to A&E, but I've got children now, so I go far more than I used to.
That and
Because
GPs, right?
children have
I
accidents.
find I never went to
Oh
the
yeah,
GP practice.
yeah,
As soon as you have kids, next thing you know, you're there all the time for either
yeah.
injections or you're going there because they're sick and they need medicine, and it's constant, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and you understand that that the services need to be better, and I think people are seeing that, and I think we have to meet that moment.
Yeah, for sure. So in that case, I've got some light-hearted questions I ask everyone. So I want you
Uh-huh.
to imagine fast forward to, well, we know the election's not going to be in May now as we're recording this. Unless something quite spectacular happens in the next few hours, I think it's going to be later in the year. So if you are successful and you are elected as the MP for Calder Valley, and after an amount of time where you are established in the community, being its voice, one day Prime Minister Starmer asked you to serve in his cabinet or just to become a junior minister in a department, which department would you serve in and why?
So the first thing I'd say is that, I mean, I tend to think about this more about what committee I want to serve in, actually, because that's the thing I've had time to sit around and think about, and where can I add knowledge, where can I add experience, and I've got a background that means that there's some policy areas in MO. So I've been a local councillor for 8 years. I used to work for a trade union. I understand a lot of trade union legislation. And then, I work in healthcare now. I'm cabinet member for social care, and I used to work on welfare benefits. So I've got kind of a fairly broad background. But actually, I think having worked particularly on social care in recent years and seeing the impact that a social care system that needs to be wrestled with and improved has on our health service, and understanding that impact, that the impact that has and the damage that does to people's ability to live in their own home and get the support that they need. I would want to work on something around social care, so in our health team, and make sure that we actually we respect people who do those jobs, and we say because care work is skilled work, and actually at the moment there's a debate about whether people in care should have a living wage, and actually that's the start, but actually in the long term they need a skilled wage, and that's how we keep people in those jobs, and that's how we get the best people in those jobs, and that's how we make sure that therefore therefore we're keeping people out of hospital and we're taking that pressure off the health service. And I think so when I think about things that I'd like to do, I'd hope to be on the health select committee and make some of those important arguments about the making sure that care is valued in the same way that the health service is valued.
Fantastic answer. You know what? I think the biggest problem as well with staffing issues when you treat staff in that way is the turnover is so high that it's really hard to kind of keep the skills and the knowledge base in those jobs where they can be passed on. So, I think in the NHS, that's also going through something similar where people just aren't staying as long as they used to, which means that you're not learning from the really experienced consultants, the really experienced nurses and all the other medical staff there, because people are just leaving so soon that it's just harder to retain it. And I think social care probably feels that even more acutely.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting if you look at the social care pathway, because people come to social care from retail, they then train and they get better at manual handling and so forth, and then they leave to the NHS. And obviously it's great to have that workforce going into the NHS, but actually long term that's not sustainable, because actually, the pound that you spend in social care saves you 5 in healthcare, because it means that people aren't arriving at hospital as much. It means that when they get there, their acuity isn't as great. And it means that, things are picked up early and people are able to live fuller lives. And actually, it's not just about that. It's about the quality of life people can live, because most people do want to live in their home or with some degree of independence, and social care offers that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, then. Now, one thing that I know about you is quite interesting. You are a fell runner. So I'm going to ask you about music in a moment. But I imagine as somebody who probably listens to a lot of stuff as you're running, you're wearing these funky earphones now. So firstly, what is fell running? And then I want to just ask you, what would be your favourite song to take with you to Desert Island Discs? So something you might be listening to when you're running, I guess.
So fell running is trail running, but with more mud. We were recording the week that Jasmine Paris became the first woman to finish the Barkley Marathons, and her background is as a fell runner, and it's off-road running. You usually have to navigate yourself, although you have to navigate yourself a lot more if you're at the front of the race, whereas I tend to just follow people because I'm not that fast. And it's
and hope for the best that they know where they're going.
Yeah. You find out what the local club's running shirts are, and you follow someone wearing one.
The most reliable person, you go, they'll do.
Yeah. And kind of as someone who's I charitably describe myself as a middle of the pack fell runner. You can usually find enough, and it's some of it's on paths, some of it is you're following the kind of sheep trots across the moors, and it's just a great. It's been a kind of run in order because I've always done a bit of exercise, and I also I'm aware that in terms of my personality, I will get very focused on certain things. It's perhaps where I was a bit focused on politics and just needed a little bit to create some space. What I probably hadn't anticipated was that instead I've just become obsessed by something else. So I'm also an obsessive runner, and
More obsessions.
I do my Duolingo obsessively, and I'm about to run my fifth marathon in a couple of weeks, and yeah.
Wow, good luck.
But I mean, thank you. I think actually more broadly, I think exercise is really important because actually, I mean, it's important mental regulation, and it gets you gives you that space that you need to think, and it's often gives you something else to focus on. And I think people often get a bit moralising about it, and I know as well as anyone that if you've got kids, it's really hard to fit in. But I think it is one of those things, and it's my wife and I are quite good at doing that juggle. So
you need a bit of you time, that's for sure. I think with life being busy, and families, of course, make life busy anyway, but I'm sure we're all busy these days, and making the time. I was actually working out really well from January to February. My stats at the gym were superb. Then I've had this leg injury, and it still hurts now, so I have to go to the doctor about it.
Yeah.
And it kind of just threw me off completely, which is a real shame because I was really enjoying it. And it's weird how you can say that at the time, but when you make the time, you suddenly go, "Where's that all come from?" It just happens, doesn't it? You just have to be a bit proactive and make it work.
So in that case, then, to seriously cut down on my mindless scrolling of Twitter and things like that.
Well, right, okay. Mindfulness, I think, has been a thing that's come around the last few years because phones are now taking so much of our attention, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like I was thinking, when I was growing up, and sort of similar age to yourself, when I was growing up and on the bus on the way to school, you were just mindlessly just sat there chilling out. You weren't thinking about something in particular. You might be reading, you might be listening to some music maybe, but apart from that, you weren't like constantly plugged into your phone. And I just think that's not healthy for any of us, is it really?
No, I used to have a Discman.
Oh yeah, I had a Discman back in the day. Oh yeah, until I dropped it and crapped the chip on it. But anyway,
then I had a what are they called? Mini disc, which were obviously going to.
I had mini disc, I had mini disc as well. We really are putting ourselves in a certain vintage here because then like MP3 players overtook it, and Napster got shut down, and MP3s were said to be dead, and I got a mini disc player, and then next thing you know, Apple kind of brought out the iPod, and it was all kind of over then, wasn't it? For mini discs.
Have we just become the worst middle-aged dad podcast going? Do you remember how things were once?
Do you remember when Channel 5 came out and there's only 4 channels on your TV before then? Yeah. Not like these days with the kids and all their TV choices. Oh, back in the day. Anyway, sorry. So just go back in the day for a second. So, Desert Island Discs is a show which, of course, has been going for many, many decades. And now we've assessed that you are listening to music as you're out on your runs. Is there one particular song that you would suggest taking with you to the desert island if you're on that show?
So I'd struggle for a particular song, but there is an artist. If I can dodge the question a bit. So I remember when my wife and I were organising our wedding, we were like, "Oh, we'll just do a playlist. We don't need a DJ." And then a few weeks before, we were at a friend of mine's wedding, and the DJ was really good, and he didn't object to my occasionally coming and asking for songs, which was good. And we ended up hiring him, and we gave him One Direction, not One Direction. We gave him one instruction.
One Direction it is. That's all I needed. No. Let's move on. So One Direction from Josh.
Absolutely not. I'm not entirely sure.
Oh, that's another one.
And the instruction that we gave him was just play as much Prince as you can when people stop dancing, and then they'll dance again. So I think for me, I think it'd have to be something by Prince because it's always
What about
it
Raspberry
just it,
Beret? That's a great song, isn't it?
yeah,
I'm not a huge
it,
Prince fan, but I do like that one in
yeah,
particular. So should we put? Because I'm going to make a Spotify
yeah,
playlist and put these on there for activists to
yeah.
listen to as they're knocking on
No,
doors. So
let's have Kiss.
Kiss, okay. Because if I put the whole of Prince's
Kiss by
work on
Prince.
there, it does skew the kind of playlist a little bit. So Kiss by
Yeah,
Prince
but
it
what a
is then.
playlist.
Maybe for you it is, not for the rest of us. And One Direction as well. I'm sure that's what you said. So okay, we'll put that on there too. Right, great. So I just want to say all the very best of luck for the general election whenever it comes, Josh, in Calder Valley. Noticing back in the kind of the results, like you said, you've had some really close, almost like 600 votes is ridiculously close, isn't it? So you've been really close before. But I noticed though you're kind of lucky because in 2005, the ex-prime minister, although according to her she might be the future prime minister again, Liz Truss stood there in
Yeah.
2005. So you could have been standing against her the last few times. Wouldn't that have been interesting?
It would have been, yeah. I mean, she was here in 2005, and it was, I mean, our local Conservative Party have never been exactly cohesive, but yeah, she was their candidate, and they did locally. The Conservatives chose her as their to back her as their candidate for Prime Minister, and Craig Whittaker has always been a big supporter of hers, and I don't know about the current candidate, but obviously she represents a local party that did support Liz Truss, and yeah, she was candidate here. Everyone said that she was. Uh, the thing that people always used to say was that she didn't quite have that personability thing that I think is quite important sometimes.
I totally agree with
And I
that.
wonder
Yeah,
if that was one of the things that, I mean, that and no grasp of economics at all were, I think, the things that perhaps
yeah.
hindered her as prime minister. Um, So yeah, so no, we did nearly have this trust, but also it means that not winning in Calder Valley in your history isn't any break on where you can go as a politician, I guess. So maybe that's the message to take from that.
There you go. Wow, you heard it
Um,
here first, guys.
yeah, I do actually think we should ask all of the Conservatives, given that we've had three prime ministers since the last election, we should ask all the
Yeah,
Conservative MPs who, when they depose Rishi, they'll be supporting all the candidates, because actually there's no certainty that we will end up with if Labour win the next election, we will have Keir Starmer as our prime minister. If the Conservatives win the next election, it could be anyone from the bar scene in Star Wars as our next prime minister. And actually, we do need to be quite clear that no one voted for the absolute anarchy that the Kwarteng budget did to all of our mortgages. No one voted for that level of cuts. In fact, people vote for the levelling up, however disingenuous one might think that claim
yeah,
was.
yeah,
And it's really important that we do remember that, a vote for the Conservatives is a vote for any leader. You
yeah,
look at Jonathan Gullis has just been promoted. Is he going to be the next Tory leader? Robert Jenrick is saying that he's running. I mean, I mean, the odd thing about Robert Jenrick is, even as a political obsessive, I couldn't pick him out of a lineup. But what I do know is that his act as immigration minister was to paint over Disney pictures that were welcoming to
yes,
children. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah. Awful.
what, it's just mad. And
It's
so I
weird
think I
stuff,
think
isn't
we
it?
do, we do have to ask all of our Conservative candidates who they will choose to be the next leader, because
Yeah,
there's no guarantee that they'll stick with the one they've got.
totally agree. Totally agree. So, Josh, final one thing then. How can people get involved in your campaign? Where's the best places to go and check you out on social media, websites, etc., to find about campaign days, so that people can now be, traveling to Calder Valley, who wouldn't want to after this, to try and help you get
Yeah.
elected?
Absolutely. Well, the first thing I'd say is that Calder Valley decides the elections. There is a lot of triumphalism in Labour circles, and we need to be really careful, because actually what we are looking to do is something that hasn't been done since 1970. That is, have one government with a working majority replaced by another government with a working majority. And actually this government have a huge majority. We've got a huge task ahead of us. and it's only by winning seats like Calder Valley that we're going to do that. To get involved in the campaign, obviously, if you like phone canvassing, you can do that from home and just put in Calder Valley as your constituency. We've put all of our campaigning sessions online, so if you look up on the Labour website, Campaigning in Calder Valley, you will find campaign sessions you can sign up to. We are out at least 4 times every weekend, often more than that. We're out during the week as well, and we are going to fight every inch of this election because we've got a responsibility to do that, because the future of our country is relying on a government that is actually working for the future and working for everybody. So please, if you can spare half an hour on the phones, talk, phone one of the most reliably marginal constituencies in the country. If you're in anywhere in the north, it's really easy to get here, back from Leeds, Manchester, whatever, and come and see do some Happy Valley tourism. Come and see where Sarah Lancashire lives, and where we've got all that stuff as well. So be lovely to see lots of people. It'll make everything you can do makes a difference. The Tories have got millions of pounds from Simon Hester. We don't have that, but we have people who care about what we do, and we have the fact that we're actually offering something to this country that will make people's lives better. And I'm really excited to knock on people's doors, but actually after that, I'm really excited to stand up and be a proper voice for this community, because our voice has been lacking for some years.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Josh. Good luck in the up-and-coming election.
Thank you.
Before I go, may I ask a massive favour? Like this podcast and smash that subscribe button. Leave a review. Share this podcast with other Labour Party members, your CLPA executive, and anyone who, like us, wants to fight for the next Labour government our country so desperately needs. If you're a candidate and wish to come onto the show, then email me at labourpodcast@gmail.com. Until next time, bye for now.